Been talking plenty about fall camp as we get closer and closer to the start of the season. Give us some perspective on what it's like to be a player within fall camp. Our guy Patrick DiMarco, a former Gamecock himself, obviously several years in the NFL as well. As you were getting set for a season, what were summer camps like fall camps like from your perspective as you got closer and closer to kickoff?
Hot. It's obviously playing here in the Southeast, South Carolina, Atlanta, growing up in Florida. Just this time of year always gets you excited, but it is definitely hot out there, and just kind of digging in all the, spring camp, winter workouts, summer workouts, like finally the chance to put the pads on and hit somebody, knowing season's right around the corner. So it's definitely an exciting time, but especially here in Columbia, man, those camp practices were hot.
Hey, Pat, it's Wes. Appreciate you doing this, man. Tell us everything we need to know about this podcast. When can we hear the first episode? How did it come about? And, what do you think you and Steven's approach will be in terms of maybe giving the fans a behind-the-scene look back at y'all's time at Carolina?
Yeah, so we've recorded 2 episodes already. We have a couple really cool guests on those episodes and have bunch more lined up, but first episode's going to be aired next Wednesday on the 14th, which we're really excited about, and kind of how it came to fruition. I just realized that a lot of other schools, competitors of Carolina and the SEC and other conferences, actually had a former player involved in media content, whether that be a podcast, YouTube, streaming, but also helping out with NIL in that sense. And I just, we had no real presence of that, and started juggling around the idea of it, had some conversations with some people, actually relied on one of our mutual friends, Jamie Bradford, a lot about it. And he kind of helped spearhead this, and I reached out to Steven just knowing, hearing him on podcasts, it's just always extremely entertaining, as you guys would imagine. So I reached out to Steven and asked if he would be interested in doing something like this. And he was first thing he said is, I've been thinking about this for a long time too. I just didn't know where to start and who to do this with. And holy smokes, match made in heaven. I would consider myself the brains and Steve the beauty, the entertainer. So blend us together. And we have a pretty cool team. And during our time here from 2007 to 2011, we had some really cool experiences, won some really big games. Steven had some really cool experiences as well, maybe not off the field, on the field and off the field, that we'll dive into and talk a little bit about. One of our guests on the first 2 episodes has a inside sneak peek on a lot of that stuff. But we just, we want to highlight former players, guys that we played with, guys that played before us, guys that played after us, give them a platform to share their story, why they chose Carolina, some of their fondest memories here, what they're doing now, let them promote some of their own businesses, let some of the Gamecock fans know there's guys that play here that are in politics. There's guys that are in the wealth management world. There's guys that are in the law enforcement. We have a lot of guys that we played with that are doing a lot of really cool things around the state that I think need to be highlighted, but also in a sense, kind of mirroring that, but let's highlight some of our current players as well. We're going to have some current player guests, so let them tell us similar stuff, why they chose Carolina, what they like doing in their off time. If they could have their one NIL deal, what would it be? Let them pitch, let them learn, but also get them out there and network and let fans hear what their interests are. Let's try to get some of these guys jobs post-football and stuff. Hopefully this can spearhead that kind of stuff. Now,
you guys put out a neat little promotional video for this when the podcast is dropping. How would you rate your acting performance in that video with Steven?
Subpar, but that should be as expected. My wife was, when I showed it to her for the first time, she's like, this is embarrassing. And I'm like, I'm aware. I don't think the whole idea of this is for people to try to win us. We're not trying to win a Grammy here. We're trying to spark some attention, bring awareness to this, and hopefully get people excited. And from everything we've seen on social media and the phone calls and all the people that have reached out to us about wanting to be on the show, it worked. So my acting might have stunk, and I know it did, but it was well executed.
Yeah, and Pat, we won't give it away, but I've heard some rumors about maybe some of the initial guests. I think fans are definitely going to be pumped to not just hear from you and Steven, but to hear from these guests as well. So I think that's going to be fun, man. While we got you, let's talk a little bit about this current roster. How excited are you as a former fullback / tight end about the possibility of an offense that could have Rocket Sanders in the backfield alongside a guy like Lenora Sellers who provides that run threat, and maybe go 2 tight ends and run some Sean Elliott run scheme? What do you think about just the potential of what this offense could be this season, kind of from your perspective, man?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a little bit different of a roster dynamic, not having Spencer Rattler here and a guy that can sling the football at the best of them. But also not taking away from anything that Lenore's can do, because he showed really good playmaking ability in his small sample size last year. So a lot to be excited about. But also, the Joker's 6'5" or 6'6", 240, 250 pounds, and runs like a deer. So just bringing a different dynamic to the football game. I mean, you look at the NFL and look at Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, the different things that you can do running the quarterback and extending plays, like that is a huge threat that Lenore is going to bring. I mean, and just like I think everybody understands it, but there's going to be young quarterback woes throughout the course of the season, but you can eliminate that stuff a lot by having Rocket Sanders in the backfield and being able to hand the ball off to him 20, 25 times a game and average 4 or 5 yards a carry, turn the chains over, get an extra safety in the box. That'll really open things up for Lenore, not to mention like his running ability. You have to have an extra hat. You have to account for the quarterback run game. So there's going to be people down there. So there are going to be big plays available in the pass game as well. And, I mean, Coach Loggins, I've known him for 5 or 6 years now from his time in the NFL and his relationship with Connor. I mean, he's really good at developing the quarterback position. I mean, we see what he did with Spencer last year. So, I mean, everything I see, Lenore's is going to have an awesome year. Coach Elliott being back here, bringing the run game. I mean, what they did at Georgia State, they were one of the most efficient run teams in the country every single year that he was there. He understands how to run the ball. He likes having tight ends on the field and an occasional H-back fullback. So I think, I mean, we're going to see a lot different of an offense with Lenore Sellers, and you have to adjust the game to what your talent pool can do. And this roster's designed to be explosive in many facets: running the ball, passing the ball, quarterback run game. So I think it's going to be really exciting. I mean, we're 3 weeks away, and I'm fired up.
Pat, Chris Clark here. Thanks for taking time to do this. Wanted to ask you a question that kind of goes off what you were just talking about with the run game, the personnel, the scheme. You know, one of the areas that has to improve from last season is obviously the offensive line. So, you know, even thinking back to your time at Carolina, you guys had some really good, you know, future NFL offensive linemen on that roster. But you had mobile quarterbacks. You had yourself in the backfield helping block. You had, Marcus Lattimore.
Wait, are you considering Steven mobile?
You know, he's got a little bit. We were talking about the Florida game the other day. He was mobile-esque. Yeah. Maybe no Connor.
Yeah,
do you give him a hard time about not being mobile?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think my 40 time was faster than him, and I wouldn't say I was a running fullback. So
right.
I was just giving him a hard time. But
how much does that work? Help the offensive line as far as just having really good personnel in the backfield and a mobile quarterback. If the quarterback is mobile,
Steven was listed as a dual threat on Rivals, by the way, back in the day.
Yeah. Whatever. But no, I mean, it definitely. I mean, you have to have another hat in the box, and that's the big piece to it. Is if you do have a mobile quarterback, you have to account for him. And then, I mean, just in today's offense with all the shifts and motions and jet sweeps and all these different things, like, you're just adding gaps on the backside. You send a tight end from the strong side go back to the backside, cutting off the backside defensive end, you're adding 2 gaps. Gap inside of him, gap outside of him. So all these different things is like the moving parts really confuse the defense. And I mean, in the run game, like being a fullback and diving into that piece for as long as I did, I mean, the run game is just getting one guy out of gap. And if you got one guy out of gap, you have a real chance to get one-on-one with the corner or safety. And then, I mean, that's on the running back. Like, that's our big thing when we were in Atlanta and Buffalo is like, hey, we can block all, but running back, you got that corner, and we're paying you a decent amount of money to make him miss. So he's on you. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunities with that with the mobile quarterback. And I mean, rocket back there, and not to mention you're not having to block the backside defensive end. If you're running zone read, like usually the premier pass rusher is kind of a guy that you circle on the scattering report standpoint of like, you know, when I was in Atlanta, we're playing the Carolina Panthers, like Julius Peppers was circled. Like, this guy's a game changer. We have to get 4 hands on him in the run game. And it's pretty nice if you read him on the backside and don't have to block him, and he's basically taking himself out of a play. So a lot of cool things. I mean, Lonnie Teasley I learned a bunch from him when I was there for 2 years. Sean Elliott, obviously, has been a mentor of mine and helped me out a bunch when I was playing here and then even afterwards. So, I mean, those two working together, it should be a really cool thing, and the run game should really explode for us this year.
Again, talking to Patrick DiMarco, former Gamecock and NFL vet. Last one for you here. Got right at about 2 minutes. Obviously, last year was 5-7, and Beamer and company preached how, you know, that's not acceptable, and they, you know, want to get back into the winning ways and at least find their way back to a ball game this season. You were on some South Carolina teams that didn't have records that you guys are probably the most thrilled about. What's the mindset and the attitude in the locker room going into a season coming off a year that wasn't what you wanted it to be?
I mean, I think the big elevation for us and the motivation for us during my time here, I mean, my freshman year, we were 6-1, number 5 or 6 in the country. We lost our last 5. And I remember that entire off season I was just finished my freshman year, and I played a little bit, but not a crazy amount. But I saw leaders step up, take the reins, saw the leaders grab the younger guys that they knew were going to be leaders down the road and kind of pass the torch on to them. So, I mean, off season sucks when you lose 5 in a row or when you go 5-7. Like, it's not fun. And it's not intended to be fun. I mean, there's a standard that was set, you know, before I got here, during my time here, after my time here, that needs to be upheld. And, I mean, Coach Beamer was here during those years. He understands it. That's why he's so fired up and ready to get this thing turned around, too. So I think with the work they've put in, from everything I've heard and seen, and the leaders they have in place, and the Luke Doty's, the Boogie Huntleys, the Tonka Hemingways, the Rocket Sanders, the Josh Simons, the Devo Williams, the Nick, the DQs, like, there's a lot of pieces in place there. And there's been a lot of football play that these guys are going to step up and, you know, really challenge the younger guys and really elevate the team in total.